You rehearse conversations that will never happen. You lie in bed at night and script both sides of an argument. You play out scenarios where you finally say the perfect thing, where you defend yourself flawlessly, where you win. You imagine confrontations that haven't occurred yet and probably never will. You prepare speeches for people who aren't listening. And somewhere in all that mental rehearsal, you've stopped living your actual life. This isn't just daydreaming. This is your mind trying to control the uncontrollable. It's building elaborate defenses against threats that exist only in your imagination. And the strange part? Most of these conversations you're preparing for will never take place. The person you're arguing with in your head might not even be thinking about you. The conflict you're bracing for might never arrive. But you keep rehearsing anyway, over and over, as if practice will somehow protect you from uncertainty. Think about how much time you spend there, in these imaginary dialogues, crafting comebacks, defending yourself against accusations that haven't been made, explaining yourself to people who haven't asked. You're essentially having full conversations with phantoms. And these phantom conversations feel more real than the actual interactions happening around you. You're at dinner with someone, but you're not really there. You're somewhere else, 3 days from now, having an argument that might never happen. This is how anxiety works. It pulls you out of now and drops you into a future that doesn't exist yet. And then it makes you prepare for that future as if it's inevitable. Your mind becomes a rehearsal space for disasters. A theater where you're both the actor and the audience, performing confrontations, practicing defenses, running through worst-case scenarios on an endless loop. But here's what's actually happening beneath all this mental rehearsal. You're not preparing. You're avoiding. You're avoiding the present moment because the present moment requires you to be vulnerable, to not know what's coming, to not have the perfect response ready. In the present, you can't script both sides of the conversation. You can't control what someone else will say. You can't guarantee the outcome. So you retreat into fantasy, where you have complete control, where you know all the lines, where you always win. The irony is brutal. By rehearsing conversations that will never happen, you're making yourself less present for the conversations that actually do happen. You're so busy practicing in your head that when real interaction arrives, you're not there. You're disconnected, distracted, still running yesterday's rehearsal or tomorrow's imagined conflict. The actual person in front of you becomes almost invisible because you're too busy arguing with the version of them that exists in your mind. And these phantom conversations drain you. They exhaust you as much as real conflicts would, maybe more. Because at least real conflicts have endings. At least real conversations eventually conclude. But the ones in your head, they'd loop forever. You can replay the same argument 50 different ways, testing different approaches, different words, different tones. You become your own tormentor, creating stress about situations that haven't even happened yet. This pattern reveals something deeper about how we're trying to live. We're attempting to rehearse life before living it, to prepare for every possible outcome so we never get surprised, never get hurt, never look foolish. We want to have the perfect response ready for every situation. We want to be invulnerable, but life doesn't work that way. Life is improvisation. It's unrehearsed. It's messy and unpredictable, and full of moments where you don't have the right words, where you stumble, where you don't know what to say. By the way, our shared space of light and awareness is on its way to 100,000 people. Thank you to everyone who subscribes and brings this moment closer. So why do we do this? Why do we spend so much time having conversations with people who aren't there? It comes down to control and safety. When you rehearse a conversation in your mind, you control everything. You know what you'll say. You know what they'll say. You can adjust the script until you win. You can prepare for every objection. You can defend against every attack. In your mental rehearsal, you're safe. You're ready. You're powerful. But real conversations aren't like that. Real people don't follow your script. They surprise you. They say things you didn't anticipate. They react in ways you didn't prepare for. And that's terrifying for someone who's been living in rehearsal mode. Because in real interaction, you have to be present. You have to respond in the moment. You have to be okay with not knowing, with being caught off guard, with sometimes not having the right words. The mental rehearsing is also about unfinished business. You're often replaying conversations that already happened, trying to rewrite them. Someone said something to you last week, and you didn't respond the way you wanted to. So now you're replaying that moment, giving yourself better lines, imagining yourself being more assertive, more clever, more composed. You're trying to retroactively fix something that's already done. But you can't edit the past by rehearsing it in your mind. All you're doing is keeping yourself stuck in that moment, unable to move forward. Or you're rehearsing future conversations with people you're afraid of. Your boss, your parent, your partner, someone who holds power over you or whose opinion matters to you. You imagine what they might say, what they might criticize, what they might demand, and you prepare your defense. You build arguments, you construct explanations, you ready yourself for battle. But here's the thing, most of these battles never happen. Most of the confrontations you're preparing for never materialize. You're defending yourself against accusations that are never made. You're solving problems that don't exist. This is called anticipatory anxiety. Your mind is trying to protect you by preparing you for every possible negative outcome. It thinks it's helping. It thinks that if you rehearse enough, you'll be ready for anything. But what actually happens is you exhaust yourself preparing for possibilities that never become realities. You live in a constant state of readiness for conflicts that don't arrive. And in that state of readiness, you can't relax. You can't be present. You can't actually connect with people because you're too busy preparing to defend against them. There's also something else happening here. These phantom conversations often reveal what you're really afraid of. Not the specific words or scenarios, but what they represent. Maybe you're rehearsing a conversation with your partner where they tell you they're leaving. That rehearsal isn't really about the conversation. It's about your fear of abandonment. Maybe you're imagining your boss criticizing your work. That's not about the actual feedback. It's about your fear of not being good enough. The phantom conversations are symptoms. They're pointing to deeper fears that you haven't faced directly. When you spend all your time in mental rehearsal, you're living in a state of perpetual preparation, but never actually doing anything. You're always getting ready, but never arriving. You're practicing for life instead of living it. And the sad truth is that no amount of mental rehearsal can actually prepare you for the unpredictability of real human interaction. You can imagine 1,000 different versions of a conversation, and the real conversation will still surprise you, because real people are complex and spontaneous and full of variables you can't predict. What makes this pattern particularly insidious is that it feels productive. It feels like you're doing something useful. You're preparing. You're thinking ahead. You're being strategic. But you're not. You're just avoiding the present moment and the uncertainty it contains. You're trading actual experience for imaginary control. And that trade leaves you disconnected from reality, trapped in a mental theater where you're endlessly rehearsing scenes that will never be performed. This is also exhausting for the people around you. When they try to talk to you and you're not really present because you're still running yesterday's argument or preparing for tomorrow's confrontation, they feel it. They sense your absence, your distraction, the way you're responding to a version of them that exists in your head rather than the actual person in front of you. Relationships suffer when one person is constantly having conversations with phantoms instead of engaging with the reality right in front of them. So what do you do about this? How do you stop rehearsing and start actually living? First, you have to notice that you're doing it. Catch yourself in the act of phantom conversation. Notice when you're mentally scripting dialogue, when you're having arguments with people who aren't there. Just notice it. Don't judge it. Don't try to stop it immediately. Just become aware that it's happening. Once you notice it, you can start to ask questions. What am I really afraid of here? What is this rehearsal trying to protect me from? What would happen if I didn't prepare? What am I avoiding in the present moment by retreating into this imaginary future? These questions help you see beneath the surface behavior to the underlying fear or need that's driving it. Then you can practice being with uncertainty. This is uncomfortable. It means not knowing what will happen, not having the perfect response ready, not being able to control the outcome. It means showing up to conversations without a script and trusting that you'll find words in the moment. It means being okay with sometimes saying the wrong thing, with sometimes not knowing what to say, with sometimes being surprised or caught off guard. This doesn't mean you should never think ahead or consider how you want to approach a difficult conversation. There's a difference between thoughtful preparation and compulsive mental rehearsal. Thoughtful preparation might mean you take a few minutes to consider your main points before a meeting. Compulsive rehearsal means you spend hours or days running through every possible variation of how the conversation might go, scripting both sides, preparing for every contingency. The key difference is that one is brief and purposeful, while the other is endless and anxiety-driven. One helps you clarify your thoughts, while the other pulls you out of reality and into fantasy. One is in service of actual communication, while the other is in service of control and self-protection. You also have to be willing to let go of the fantasy of perfect performance. The rehearsals are often about imagining yourself being more articulate, more confident, more powerful than you actually feel. They're about being the version of yourself you wish you were, rather than the version you actually are. But real connection happens when you show up as you actually are, not as some rehearsed, perfected version. People respond to authenticity, not to perfectly crafted scripts. And here's something that might surprise you. When you stop rehearsing and start being present, you often find that you're more articulate and authentic than you thought you'd be. When you're not trying to follow a script in your head, when you're actually listening and responding in the moment, words come more naturally. You're more fluid, more genuine, more connected. The version of you that shows up unrehearsed is often better than the version you were trying to prepare. The phantom conversations also lose their power when you bring them into reality. Sometimes the thing you need to do is actually have the conversation you've been rehearsing. Not with the script you prepared, but just honestly addressing whatever needs to be addressed. Often you'll find that the real conversation is nothing like your mental rehearsal. It's easier or different, or it goes in a direction you never anticipated. And even if it's difficult, at least it's real. At least it has an ending. At least you can move forward instead of staying stuck in rehearsal mode. There's also something liberating about accepting that you won't always have the perfect response, that sometimes you'll be caught off guard, that sometimes you'll say something clumsy or not say anything at all. This is part of being human. This is part of real connection. The people worth connecting with don't need you to be perfect. They don't need you to have every response prepared. They need you to be present and real, and actually there with them. When you finally step out of the rehearsal and into the present moment, something shifts. You start to notice what's actually happening around you instead of what might happen in the future. You hear what people are actually saying instead of what you imagined they would say. You respond to reality instead of to the phantoms in your mind. And gradually, the exhausting habit of endless mental rehearsal begins to loosen its grip. The conversations you've been rehearsing might never happen, but your life is happening right now. And every moment you spend in phantom conversation is a moment you're not actually living. The choice, as always, is yours. Keep rehearsing, keep preparing, keep trying to control the uncontrollable, or put down the script. Step into the present and see what happens when you meet life unrehearsed. If this video changed something in you, write in the comments, "I choose presence." Write it as your promise to stop rehearsing and start living. Nobody